Funding for Arts in Context is provided in part by an award from the National Endowment for the Arts.
I applied for this enormous commission at the airport, and it was architectural glass, thousands of square feet that would be a security wall. And I went to the interview and I just said, oh, I think it would be really beautiful to work with blue glass. And I was amazed to have gotten the commission. I've never worked with glass at all. And within a month, I was on a plane to Germany to learn this craft that goes back hundreds of years of fired enamels onto glass. And I was out of my mind. Because when you're, as a painter, you're always painting light. I mean, that's actually what you're painting, no matter if you're depicting a face or a landscape. But when you're working with that fired on enamel on glass, you're really working with light. And I mean, my first sample that I made there was 8 feet tall, out of this amber color that joins molecularly to the glass. So there's no separation. And I just said out loud, I said, it's eating light. The glass is eating light. And everyone, they just laughed at me, but that's what I felt like. I had never seen anything like that. It was so rich. So I got to be the serious painter with really pulling ideas and sensations that are deep within me. From the Northwest, I witnessed the huge, some of the huge forests that still exist in the Olympic rainforest. And here's this piece at the airport. I wanted people who are landing, going through the airport, to know what the earth was or is like here. And so I created these big cross sections of actual size trees that are really wider than the walls are tall. That poetic, just that simple, iconic image. So when people walk through that space, this glass corral that is really glowing with light, I just want them to catch a moment, a synapse, where they just feel something. Maybe you don't even look, but that the light enters them. That may sound obscure, but I think it really does something to your spirit when you're walking through a big public space. If I'm lucky enough that someone would stop and look and recognize it as a tree ring, all the better. I was sort of startled to be in competition to do what would be a tabernacle within this beautiful chapel being created by Stephen Hall. They hinted that if I wanted to do more than just the tabernacle, I could do an installation. So there was my chance to do an installation, and I thought immediately, oh, the focus is all on this beautiful sanctuary lantern, and the tabernacle, I'll make the whole room a candle. So I created beeswax walls. I understood that a tabernacle was actually originally the altar of wandering Jews. So I wanted to create a space that sort of took you outside the chapel to a sacred space that could be found in the land. So I brought a tree inside the building and hung the sanctuary lantern from the tree. In all of the work that I do, I'm playing with and against and up to the architecture. This chapel is made as a stone vessel with vessels within that, and so I wanted to create the tabernacle as a stone within a stone, the candle within the room that's a candle, this idea of meditation that you go in and you go in and you go in. It still affects me to see this work that I have been down on my hands and knees doing is just this invisible plane that people are getting their energy underfoot. That's what it is. It's just the energy underfoot. Especially with the piece at the courthouse, Truth Crushed to the Earth Will Rise Again. It's the title of it. Martin Luther King said that. And here I was making a floor made out of crushed earth. You can't expect but a small percentage of people to look, but people feel something, and then some people will look, and if they choose to, they can look closer and find more, and I'm always hoping that they could look again 5 times, 10 times and see something or feel something completely different. But I have come to terms with the fact that my reward is really making the piece. The thing is, we move through space and time so fast now. We cherish our vacations we take to the beautiful monuments of Europe, and we go focused to go see places around the world. And I think we don't realize that we're working to make our own culture through public art, through public works, through programs in the public, to try to bring that richness, to try to actually even make a space of this time, of this world, that carries something of beauty, of honor, of simple grace. Is it possible that, heightening the beauty or the character of a space can bring heightened awareness to a person of themselves? I mean, wouldn't that be great?
I don't know how I got to be an artist. It just kind of happened. It's just I have a need to create things. The process I use when I make my artwork is warm glass working. And what I do is take cold pieces of glass that are already formed, and I put them in a kiln and heat them up and melt them together. And then I'll use processes of slumping, fusing, and casting to get the desired results. My father was a lawyer and he owned the Peltier Glass Factory. Basically all the glass I have that I use is from that place. They're rejected material. Like some pieces I've actually taken right out of the trash hopper. I mean, I couldn't pass it up. It's a lot easier to take it out of the trash than to build a glass furnace and melt it yourself. One of the real tricks is knowing when it's done. And basically what I do is I just keep putting the glass back into the kiln time after time until I can see a nice finished piece. And there's just something, it just kind of comes to life. And I know it's done. I'm not looking for beauty necessarily, but I do want to find something that just looks good. And when people look at it, I want them to see quality in the work, quality in the craftsmanship. I want them to know someone put some time and effort into it, you know, and cared about what they were doing and liked what they were doing. I believe in passion. You just have to go for what you're passionate about. Even if it's only for an hour a week or an hour a day or whatever. I think it's important to be passionate about what you're doing. And if you are, people will get that through your work. You can't make work for other people. You have to make it for yourself and not care what other people think. It's really a paradox. You want to make it for other people and you want them to like it, but still you can't care what they think about it. You have to believe in what you're doing.
I'm Shel White. I'm a filmmaker, a few other things. And I've been doing what I'm doing for about 25 years now. I feel like I kept making films because I really had no choice at the end of the day. Maybe it's a sickness, but I do think that anything worthwhile is very difficult. And so when I use the word sickness, I probably mean obsessed. Yeah, I guess just like there's no choice, really. There's this poem by Antonio Machado. It's really a great metaphor for climate change, and it's about having a garden. The metaphor is a garden, and then not taking care of that garden. I've loved this poem. It's called The Wind, One Brilliant Day, and that's the first line.
The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with an aroma of jasmine. And the wind said, in return for the odor of my jasmine, I'd like all the odor of your roses. I have no roses. All the flowers in my garden are dead. The wind said, well then, I'll take the waters of the fountains, and the yellow leaves, and the dried up petals. The wind left. I wept, and I said to myself, what have you done with the garden that was entrusted to you?
it's a really great, a very appropriate metaphor for lack of planet stewardship, ultimately. And so that was the nucleus of the film. And then on either end of that were these time-lapse sequences that my friend Mark, cinematographer who I've been working with for many years, and he does this amazing time-lapse. And so I wanted, you know, these images of the Earth and of human interaction and the sort of human, I think, corruption, I suppose, of the Earth. And I think the piece turned out pretty well. I was happy with it. I was very happy to be doing something that was pretty much just me. As just sort of a general principle, I think that I use story to get people to look at my images. And it's probably the other way around for most people, most filmmakers, but I'm inspired mostly visually when I think of a project. That is often the sort of springboard into the story. It happens the other way around sometimes, but I tend to get really excited about something, about a scene in a film or a film, an idea, when I can think about it visually. I definitely fall on the side of leaving room to dream. No question about that, and a lot of what I do is derived from dreams, so let people dream along with you. Well, first let me say something about the concept of using story to get people to look at images. The images have to be evocative, or it doesn't work. So, but as far as in the Thom Yorke video, you know, it's just as simple as I can remember as a kid falling asleep with headphones on, and I would get all these images to music. And so I'll do that, and I'll sort of think of, okay, what does this mean? If it means anything, how does it relate to possibly a film or a video? And then essentially mining those ideas, those images, and seeing what you get. And then taking that stuff and sort of, I guess, panning the gold out, if there is gold, and putting that on the screen, if you can. But it's collage, ultimately. I think filmmaking is collage. You're bringing disparate elements together and trying to make some sense out of them. But, you know, bringing things together and ultimately creating a meaning that is different. It's a, you know, it's everything that comes together and creates something new.
Don't walk the plank like I did. You will It's always a surprise. I mean, you think you have it figured out, and then there's always an accident. And you try to take that accident, if you like it, and improve on it. The black in a lot of my pieces was a total accident. We didn't get all the wax out, and the wax burned up and turned to carbon, and the carbon mixed with the glass, and so we had all this black gooky stuff floating in the glass. But it just happened to end up in one area of the piece, and it just happened to end up in a woman's face. So we just happened to end up with a black woman on one side and a pink woman on the other side. And I wish I still had that piece. A casting starts with the last piece I did. Each piece grows on top of another one. A lot of times I'll just start with a big chunk of styrofoam, and I'll cut the shape I like out, kind of based on the last piece I did. In the beginning, it was kind of based on the shapes that I blew in glass. Round, low, wide, squatty pieces. And so I started carving the styrofoam, and then I made the fish, and I made my original piece. And that original piece, then I made a rubber mold of that piece so I could reproduce it in just a really nice soft wax. Then I can put a plaster Paris mold around that piece. I'll steam the wax out. I'll let that dry for usually about a month. We try to force dry it to get all the moisture out of that plaster. Then we'll take powdered glass and pack that into the plaster mold, put that inside of an electric kiln, and then depending on the size of the piece, between a week and 2 weeks, we'll bring it up to the temperature. It might be between 13 and 1500 degrees. You know, I was looking for something to leave a mark. I wanted to do some pieces that would last forever and live forever, and not end up just kind of floating around. You know, I just really wanted to have something in a museum. Just this year was the first piece where the Fuller Craft Museum in Brockton, Massachusetts, just walked into the gallery, looked at the piece and says, "We really want that piece for the museum." And that gives you goosebumps. I mean, it's a feeling that you just can't describe, you know, and it was really cool. It's pretty much day by day. I mean, my body kind of dictates what I can and can't do. 5 years ago, I was doing these bowls with 36 inches across, and I was blowing glass and making plates that were 30 inches across. But I'll be 60 next year, and my body won't do that. So I'm kind of adapting to what my body is willing to do, and what the equipment's willing to do, and trying to push the envelope all the time and have an effect on people that's positive.
Funding for Arts in Context is provided in part by an award from the National Endowment for the Arts.